It's been exactly 1 year since I released Wanderer of Fallout Story. For those who don't know, Wanderer of Fallout Story is a fan story I began to think about and concept about 5 years ago now. With an amazing array of forensic technology, as well as willpower, I managed to craft a story and video that, while not perfect, I'm still very proud of. I wanted to take some time today to go through the development process of Wanderer of Fallout Story, going all the way back to when I first started to think about it in the summer of 2017. My name is The Wanderer, and today we celebrate the 1 year anniversary of my story. I started my YouTube channel in 2017, with my first videos being humble drawing videos where I displayed an art piece I did relating to Fallout and explained the lore behind the piece. I was 14 years old at the time, and my content has certainly come a long way in the half-decade I've been creating content. But even before the start of my YouTube channel, I was heavily invested in Fallout and the Fallout YouTube scene, being influenced by creators like Juicehead and Oxhorn back in the day. It was during this time I was also going through my first playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, having started my delve into the Fallout universe with Fallout 4 in Christmas of 2015. Even during my first playthrough of Fallout 4 in late 2015, early 2016, I was fascinated by power armor as a concept, and one of the armor sets that won my heart in Fallout 4 back in the day was the mysterious XO1 power armor. Eventually, when watching YouTube one day, I stumbled across the Enclave Remnant's power armor in one video. This armor was beautiful to me. It was a perfect retro-futuristic suit of power armor with a gorgeous paint job and menacing visage. Sure, the XO1 was cool and all, but its predecessor in the game beforehand outmatched it in its glory. This was the point I became enthralled into research into the Enclave. They quickly became some of my favourite villains, but even then, I wasn't interested in their ideologies or their status in the games. I was simply fascinated by their supremely advanced technology. I guess one could say I was like a Brotherhood of Steel scribe in a large tech stockpile. Soon enough, I wanted to make a character to go along with this suit of armour, one that was distant from the Enclave's ideologies and somewhat of a hero to the wastes, a classic redemption arc. One concept I had very early on was the idea to have this character sacrifice himself for the greater good, and I would keep these ideas stored away for some time. 2019 is a year I hold dear to me. I finished my GCSEs and had a blast over that summer with my friends. I also met some great people in this year who would greatly inspire me and motivate me, such as TKS Mantis and Logical Fallacy, and all the great people in their respective communities. While I was a top tier shitposter at the time, posting on funny skits and declaring war on TKS Mantis for being poopy stinky, I had bigger plans down the line. Plans I would begin to execute in that very summer. It was during this shitposty era of mine that I would begin to shift and find true talent and potential in script writing and lore research. And on the 21st of July of that year, I released Legate Linnaeus, the Monster of the East, my first ever Fallout lore video. The Legion and Linnaeus were only meant to act as a pilot episode, and soon enough another video would release covering Frank Horrigan. This was where I put my plan into fruition. I planned to make a 5-part series on the Enclave, covering their story and interesting pieces of lore surrounding them, and after I was finished, I would release my fan story. It was between the release of these 2019 lore videos that I would begin putting the sleeping ideas I had years beforehand into action. The first draft of Wanderer of Fallout Story was about to begin development. At first I had a lot of weird and bizarre ideas which further tied it to Fallout New Vegas, such as Legion remnants instead of Vipers, and having the story set after the events of Fallout New Vegas, and a really stupid way to canonize my own voice in the story, which I later removed because of how silly the idea was. I just decided to make my voice for the character not his canonical voice, so he's not British. But even then, that's a difficult thing to do considering the character is meant to be me. It was at this point I finished my rough draft and had to sit on it for a short while, as I was about to start my first year at college, learning to become a game developer. And even with this big step in my life, nobody could anticipate what would happen in March of the following year. 2020, despite the obviously horrible and terrifying things that happened that year, was an alright year for what I was able to do. Thankfully, nobody in my life succumbed to the horror that plagued the world. All I had to do was sit inside. I think I was meant to do some college work, but they had no way to monitor it, so instead I further executed my plans on the YouTube scene. It was in 2020 that I released my final 2 entries into my 5-part Enclave series, and with that, preparations could begin on Wanderer, a Fallout story. But first, I wanted to execute some other plans as well. Fallout Spookies was a new series I started on my channel, covering the scary and spooky areas of Fallout which are quite different from my usual faction lore content. The episode I released that year was covering the ghost people, but since I made this choice, it meant I was unfortunately out of time once again. This time my second year of college was just starting up, and this time it was double the workload. Having to balance my college work with my part-time job and hobbies was difficult, so I stopped making content until the holidays. It was during this time, with the help of many different people, a notable member of which was Broadway, I started to rethink and rewrite the story I'd made a year prior. I thought having my peers review the ideas so far was a good way to get feedback and make the story less ridiculous. During this rewriting phase, I changed the timeline of events slightly, added new events and new content to my story. Originally, the Ranger was going to be the courier from Fallout New Vegas, but I changed that as to not piss on the character of the courier. The Steelheads were introduced instead of a band of angry Brotherhood of Steel outcasts, as it wasn't really fitting for the type of people the Brotherhood of Steel outcasts are, and the Vipers took the role of the Legion remnants. On the 19th of December 2020, I released a 4-minute update video discussing and announcing my plans for Wanderer, a Fallout story, stating I wanted to release it in February of 2021. This release date was incredibly ambitious considering my circumstances at the time. I was still working off my iPhone and my PC was still missing pieces, and I did not have the technical know-how to make my project look alright camera-wise. This is where StuDog came in. He was helping me collect footage for my project, which I then used in the final cut just until my PC was finished, where I took the burden myself. Before this could happen, however, I drew up many storyboards and concept art pieces to convey scenes I wanted to execute. Concept art is something I want to do for a living someday, so the concept phase throughout development was integral. Despite having a decent 2 years, considering everything that happened in the previous year, 2021 is a year I can say without a doubt was the worst year of my life. With the pandemic still looming, I could not see my family over Christmas or for my birthday, and without college work to do, I felt I lacked purpose. It was during these early months of 2021 that my mental health would decline severely, and I would enter a terrifying dark place within my mind. A place I would not exit until nearly a full year later. I tried my best to push on with the creation of my fan project, but my emotions swiftly overwhelmed me and burnt me out. Thankfully, when college started up again, I finally felt I had purpose, and with this I pushed through my last year with flying wings. When the summer hit, I'd almost done with development on Wanderer, a Fallout story, just awaiting some final touches from Zabrak with his intro and Dumpky with the musical piece he made. During this time, I started to work on some of the final pieces of artwork which would eventually become the thumbnail, and drew up more concept art displaying the Wanderer post-fan story. With these concepts, I went to a good friend of mine named Avon. She helped me film the live-action post-credits for my story. She applied many special effects and makeup to my face, making me look like I'd survived a large blast with a suit of power armor to protect me. We did a test run of this before executing the actual thing days before I planned to release the project, which was quite risky looking back. It was also during these last weeks of development that I would begin to work on the trailers, teasers, and posters for my story to get my small number of fans excited. I even got some voice actors, fellow members of my community, and some from other communities such as Doc on the Radio, to play the roles of characters in the lead up to the events within my story. This was a lot of fun, and started spinning more ideas in my mind of where the characters I had created could go in the future. Finally, after months of development and years of writing and concept, I released the first entry into my story on the 8th of July 2021. I was relieved. and so happy a lot of people seem to enjoy it. The year is now 2022, and it has been an entire year since I released the first entry into the Wanderer's story. I am still, to this day, quite proud of the story I wrote, and I think the writing has only improved since then with the cast of characters I've made behind the scenes. The project isn't perfect, mainly in the camera work. I will admit that that type of camera work in Fallout was very new to me at the time, and I probably should have took the time to improve my camera work and skills using the commands in Fallout New Vegas to improve the overall quality of the video. I'm still happy with the way a lot of the art and concepting turned out, and while I think the art style in some of the slides I made back when still hold up, I have a new vision for an art style more in line with future projects that I wish to use. I also want to take the moment to say thank you to everybody who's supported me, gave me criticism on my story and my works over the last few years, and everyone else for watching. Your words and joy mean a lot to me, and I'm very grateful you took the time to watch something that started as a small fan project in the mind of a 14-year-old kid. Up next, we have The Legend of the Mantis King, the next step in my Fallout fan story covering the character from the first entry, followed by the Ranger's story. I also have a small animated short story on the side which I'm planning on developing, which is named Project Bobby. More on this soon. To say thank you, I've made a public Google document in the description with one of my final scripts and accompanying storyboards and concept art from years prior available to anyone who wants to have a read. Before we round up this video, I'd like to thank the members for their support as always. Cypriot Fox, Bonk, Lovable Douchebag, Splicer87, Stewdog, The Macabre Tavern, and Gikari. Your generous support is appreciated. If you'd like to get a shout out at the end of each video, as well as early access to the videos I make and much more, consider becoming a Wanderer supporter today and clicking my join button for £1 a month. This has been The Wanderer, and thanks for watching.